You just let me know when you want to set
Kristen,
yourself
do you
up.
mind turning off the music, please?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Okay, let me start recording really quickly.
Sure.
Let me share my screen. Okay, we're gonna give a minute just so we can let our parents, whoever is coming in a little bit later, join us. And Kristen, do you mind muting yourself? I'm so sorry.
Oh, I didn't mean to breathe heavy.
You're fine. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you and welcome to our face-to-face workshop. My name is Janet de la Luz. I am the parent coordinator for the Back to the Arts Parent University site, and our workshop for today is Neuroscience of Self-Regulation, or SELChicago. Things to know, this session will be recorded, and the purpose is that we want to share our knowledge with the parents who were not able to attend. And all our previous sessions can be found on our YouTube channel. And of course, that link is on the screen and it will be shared in the chat below. We will have a presentation followed by a conversation with Kristen. The chat will be open throughout the meeting to allow participants to type any questions. Please keep in mind that we might not have the time to go over all of the questions in the chat. Please make sure to mute your mic, be respectful of your comments, be brief when sharing, and sign up for our newsletter. And that link is on the screen and will also be in our chat. And we have our new future sessions on Wednesday. We have our coffee from 10 a.m. to 11:30. Thursday, we have our North Star workshop from 10:30 a.m. to 12. And on Friday, we have our ISAC program. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you and welcome for being here. My name is Janet de la Luz. I am the parent coordinator for the Back to the Arts Parent University site. And today our session is called Neuroscience of Self-Regulation, SELChicago. And our presenter for today is Kristen Hovius. Kristen, do you mind sharing a little bit about yourself, letting us know who you are?
Of course, it's so much. So first and foremost, I'm a Chicago public school parent. I share my life with a 7th grader and an 8th grader. So, and I've been right here in the middle of online learning and then not online learning, and all of this in our time in pandemic. I also support adults with the work that I do through our organization SELChicago, and the work that I seek to do in the world is to help us as adults create the largest possibility of mutually respectful environments, and environments that center the dignity of our students and ourselves. And so I'm deeply honored to do this work. Janet, did you want me to just get started?
Yes, let's get started.
Okay. So good evening, everyone who is joining us here, and good evening to anyone, or hello to anyone who's watching this in a recording. I am available if anyone has any questions. I just want to put right up front, my name is Kristen, and my email address is KRISTIN, that's Kristen, .Hovius, HOVIOUS, at SELChicago.com. And I am very excited to answer any questions that come up either now or later. I am going to share my screen, and sometimes I don't know about anyone else, but sometimes I talk to my screen when I'm beginning things. Most importantly for me is just to anchor and honor the fact that family leaders deserve support and investment. And I deeply appreciate the work that FACE and Family and Community Engagement is doing in the investment of ourselves as family leaders. I am working in the world to help support adults with actionable strategies. So my goal is not to just give you things that look good on a piece of paper, but my hope really is that you leave tonight with things that you can do, actionable strategies to help center dignity with yourself and other humans that you encounter. And my professional commitment is confidentiality. So anything that you share with me is either about you, your school, it is shared here with this idea of being sacred. And I also offer office hours for families and office hours for teachers. And I'll say more about that at the end of our time tonight. Is there someone who might be willing to read this slide so it's not just me talking? And if you're willing, all you have to do is come off mute and share. And if you're not able to, I'll share this one, but if you're able to, just put into the chat, I can be a reader, that'd be awesome. We are all doing the best we can with the skills and the resources we have. So our outlook on the world at SELChicago and what we try to share as much with the adults that we're supporting is that we're all doing the best we can. And this is two parts. So the first part of that, we're all doing the best we can with the skills that we have, comes from the work of Ross Greene. And Ross Greene wrote a book called Lost and Found, wrote a book called Becoming Human, or Raising Human Beings. And he says that children want to do well, and if they're not doing well, then whatever they're being presented with is beyond their current skills level. So it's really looking at us and calling us to think about looking at behaviors as the lens of what's possible in this current moment. And then I'm thinking, I added during the pandemic, the resources we have, the resources of time, the resources of patience, the resources of, do we have the opportunity to have an opportunity to listen to our kids with our level of stress in the world, with the other things that are going on in the world? I deeply believe that we're all doing the best we can with the skills and the resources we have, and that's that grounding piece. So what we wanted to do tonight is to create some community in gathering. And we're going to do that, go into breakout rooms with 3 or 4 other people. So as we are in the background, as I'm providing instructions, one of our leaders is going to be creating those breakout rooms in the background. So when you go into the breakout room, you're going to choose a timer and choose who gets to go first. I'm going to give you a prompt to go into that breakout room. And in that, that's going to come up on the next slide. And there's going to be some thinking and writing time for this. My suggestion is that you may want to get a piece of paper and a writing instrument. And then the person who goes first will choose the next person to speak. We're only going to be in the breakout rooms for about 4 minutes. But this is the writing prompt. So first, it's really simple. My name is whatever it is. I have this many children, and they attend which school. So just to ground you in the people that you're meeting, I'd like you to think about something that's really going well in your family. So something that's really going well in your family is, and then the last piece is, when you think about that, I feel, and then choosing a emotion from this feeling wheel. So as we're let's take a moment to do your prompt. And Janet, you can let me know when the breakout rooms are set up. Or if you need me to set them up, I can set them up.
Do you mind setting them up, Kristen?
I don't mind setting them up at all.
Sorry, I'm doing that now.
Oh, okay.
Just
and
second.
I want to, like, we're recording this meeting, but the breakout rooms are not recorded. So when you go into the breakout room, you will not be recorded. We're only recording the main session.
Okay, ready for me to open the rooms?
Let's have it finish up your writing prompts. I'm going to put, I'm going to also recommend that you take a quick screenshot. You can use your camera if you're on this, or you can use the snipping tool, so you can take a quick screenshot of this feelings wheel. Oh, I can share that one more time because that was rude. Take a quick screenshot. And then does anyone have any questions about what your intention is? Okay. Open up the rooms and we'll call you back in 4 minutes. If you haven't had a chance to join the room and you want to share here, you can share here. Hello, Landra. Hello, Miss Rashid. And Miss Garcia.
Yes.
I noticed that there's no timer on the rooms. Do you want me to time?
If you'd like, did
Yeah.
not give me the option to do that.
That's okay. I'll be happy to take care of that. I want to let them know when things are done.
Yep, just let me know when to let them know. I could broadcast some message to everyone.
Yeah, I can do that too. So I'll take care of
Great.
it.
Okay, sounds good.
Do you know when we call them back in, how many seconds it gives them, or will they have to come back right away?
When I close the rooms, I think it's like a 20-second count, I think, or something like that, but I'm not sure. It might just close it out automatically.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Of course.
I don't know if you can see that I'm just broadcasting that they have 2 more minutes.
Yes, I can see that.
Hello, SPS, welcome. You're in the right place. We are in breakout rooms for a few minutes, and we'll have one more opportunity to go into the breakout rooms as well. We're just building community.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if you could let me show you, you can think about something. What we're talking about in the breakout rooms, and I'm going to be calling folks back in a few minutes, is thinking about something that's really going well in your family and how you feel when you think about that.
Okay,
So glad you're here.
thank you. Thank you.
And SPS, I'm going to stop the screen share if that's okay. Miss Garcia, I noticed that Estella keeps joining and she must be having connection issues. So I just can I leave the work of getting people in to our room or to our session to you?
Yeah, no, yeah. So I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
With Estella, there was a lot of profiles trying to come in.
Oh,
Not sure.
okay. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. Room 1 and room 3 are using their time. We're going to be, Ms. Garcia, let me share with you, once everyone comes back,
Mhm.
if you could open up what you'll end up doing is creating a new breakout room, because our goal is going to have them go into different breakout rooms. So
Got it.
welcome back, everyone. Was it nice to meet a couple parents that you probably haven't met before? We're going to have an opportunity to do that one more time. So in the background, Ms. Garcia from CPS is changing our breakout rooms. So you should be going in with the same questions and with a little bit less time. So you should be going in with the same questions and getting to meet more people. And this, before we go back in, I want to ask a question. Did anyone notice, and welcome if you're just joining, did anyone notice as you got to that question, and I'm going to go back to our slides, something that's really going well in our family, and when I think about that, I feel, did anyone notice that you said, I feel good, or I feel that's nice? Right. So I want to invite you, when you go back into your breakout rooms, to go a little deeper than that. So how does it make you feel when you talk about that thing that's going really well in your family? How do you feel? And be specific about the emotion. A little bit more specific than good or nice. Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
No.
Do we just talk?
You just talk. Yeah.
Okay.
We're really just connecting. So the idea, to be specific, is share your name and what school you're calling in from, and something that's going well in your family. And when you think about that, how does it make you feel? All right, we're going to open up the breakout rooms. I'm going to be really specific with time. You have 3 minutes. So even if you have more than 4 people in the room, you only have 3 minutes. So have fun. And I hope they're in new rooms. I think they are. And hello, L. Craig, and hello, SPS. Oh, SPS just went in. And hello, Sarah. Oh, Sarah, I see your note, and of course it's totally fine. So if you want to share, if you want to type with how you're feeling, you can send that message directly to me. That's terrific. We'll be getting into content and right when they come back. All right. Welcome back. Everyone has about 30 seconds to come back. And as you come back, I'll be muting people as they come back in. Yeah, thanks. All right. So here we come. Hi, everyone. I can't go into the rooms with you, but I'm curious, what were some of the feelings? Like not what's going well, although those are fun too, but when you were talking about your feelings, what were some of those feelings that you had? Put your feelings in the chat, if you would. And we'll see what comes in. And if there's someone willing to read, not read the name of the person who shared, but read what they shared. There's anyone to be willing to be a reader?
I'll read them. Satisfied, happy, joyful, hopeful, proud.
And one was direct message to me, peaceful. I feel peaceful and hopeful.
I think with this exercise, something that I noticed that sometimes I guess we don't stop to think about the good things. We're always concentrating on the bad stuff. So this exercise kind of gives you like, okay, let me think, what is awesome? And then you're like, yeah. And that's the problem with us. We get stuck on the bed and it's in our head and it won't go away. But then we don't realize, you know what, there's positivities. Sometimes you have one friend that kind of reminds you of that. But most of the time we're either too busy to even think about those things. So it's kind of sad how our brains are computerized to, focus on the negativity and never on the positive. But it's just, you just get so angry.
I'm seeing shaking heads as I see some shaking heads. You can use your reaction buttons. And I'm going to say Ventura family because that's the name that's on the screen. But what the Ventura family just shared is for me so important to think about and to know that our brains, because we are human and we are designed for survival, our brains are actually programmed to look for challenges, to look for negative, because sometimes from an evolutionary perspective, that's what keeps us safe. Yeah. And there's a piece, I'm going to go back to my slides for a second. There's a piece that I want to note, right? That the reason why it might have been hard to name emotions is that naming emotions is a skill that we learn. Like being really explicit about the emotions that we name. And it's called emotional granularity. Claiming our emotions is something that we may not have been encouraged to do. I'm going to stop the share for a second, just so you can use the reactions buttons, or if your camera's on, put a thumbs up, or type yes in the chat if you feel the answer to this question. Have you ever been told you are so emotional? And that was
No, yes. Oh,
all right, Joyce. Right,
oh,
you are,
yes.
and it was not a compliment, right? It was very clear that that was not a compliment. So we get these cultural messages that emotions, claiming our emotions, may not be something that we are encouraged to do. And so that's one thing. And there's another really big challenge. So Daniel Goldman is one of the people who created the term social emotional learning. And he said that if you are tuned out of your own emotions, you may be really poor at reading them in others. So the other challenge with not claiming our emotions, right, or not having that, not feeling like we have really, but we have the, not skills to do so, but we have the habits of doing so. Being in tune with emotions and being able to notice them is a part of self-regulation. And it's also a part of empathy. So that exercise is a gift that I'd like to give to you, and we will make sure that you get copies. In fact, if you drop your email into the chat, I will email those to you later on tonight before my head hits the pillow. So the other thing that we want to go into, and just to be really clear about, is if you just joined, we said this at the very beginning, we're all doing the best we can with the skills and the resources that we have in a moment in time. And what the title of tonight's presentation, which is the Neuroscience of Self-Regulation, we're going to dive into how we can understand our brain's responses, both in ourselves and in others. And that is an opportunity for us to center dignity in others. So I wrote a book to help explain this. It's available in English and Spanish. And so if you'll hear me rhyme tonight. I riff a little bit and rhyme, and you'll see some illustrations, and they come from this book called Our Brain Book. And it is designed to be a playful way, because we learn best when we're playful. A playful way, I shouldn't say best, because that's judgment. We learn with greater ease when we can be playful. The hand model of the brain is designed by this gentleman by the name of Dan Siegel, and it was first in a book, his book that he wrote with Mary Hartzell, called Parenting from the Inside Out. And so if you take your thumb and cover it up with your fingers, and I like to think of it as purple, blue, and red. So here's your brain, say hello. The brain's amazing as it learns and grows. It has 3 parts, purple, red, and blue. And now let's talk about what they do. The biggest is the purple part. Its jobs are many and complex. Creative thinking and learning are the roles of the cortex. And the cortex, this part of the brain that is our thinking brain, it is the last part of the brain to fully mature and come online. And it is learning throughout our lifetimes. Our cerebral cortex is always looking out into the world. What can I learn? How can I solve this? How can I contribute? So the cerebral cortex looks at the world to how we can contribute to the world, how we can be of service. And the communication language is words. So we're thinking in words, we're thinking in complexity problem solving. And our tools, if you take a look at your fingernails with this little hand model of the brain, creativity and empathy and wisdom and executive functioning. That's a term that we throw out a lot in learning, executive functioning. So our ability to pause, our ability to have working memory, our ability to keep focused on a task without being distracted, and our ability to problem solve. Even our ability to manage stress is landed in our cerebral cortex. So I have a quick question. In the chat, see if you can not pay attention to the chat, but go into the chat. And my question is, how old are you as a human being before your cerebral cortex is fully mature? How old are you before your cerebral cortex is fully mature? So there's going to be some things that are coming online, and I'll read them as they come in. So 25, 27, 25, early 20s, somewhere between 25 and 35. Someone just direct messaged me 80. Someone direct messaged me 8. So the answers that came into the chat are right in alignment with what brain science tells us. So it's around 25. And the insurance, if you're a person of a certain age, and I'm going to age myself, and if this is recording, I am a proud 51. But ever since I was in my late teens, I knew that I could not rent a car unless it was co-signed by an adult, and that age was 25. So the insurance companies have known for a long time about executive function, about problem solving, about the ability to delay gratification. Our humanness, our ability to do that doesn't come online until we're around 25. So our children are doing the best they can with the skills they have. And I want to dive in. So I'm a former anatomy teacher, and I want to dive in a little bit with the right and left side of the brain. So
Can I share something?
Oh yeah, please, thank you. Yeah.
So what I noticed is, so I have nephews, right? And they're all, they went to college, they're all, growing up and everything. And they're constantly complaining, the dad constantly complains to them, you need to do this, you need to do that. And they're like, I know, coming. But finally they graduate, they're living their life. And at 22, 25, I get what my dad was saying then. So it's like, why does it take you this long? But they argue with you, and then I kind of noticed, like, damn, yeah, it has to, yeah, you're never gonna mature until like you're 25 to understand why they all said the things that they said, all the parents, all the guidances and everything. By 25, they all, oh, that's why. Oh, so it's kind of funny hearing my nephew say that. But I was like thinking about that, like, when did I kind of figure out, yeah, you don't do these things because you're gonna get in trouble. But it's funny that I finally saw it in my nephews, and I was like, that I'm looking at his age, I'm like, yep, there you are. And that it makes sense. Thanks.
Well, and you're bringing something up that I'd like to do, because we didn't do this at the beginning. Would you mind putting into the chat the ages of the children who are in your care? So what are the ages of the children who are in your care? And I'll read them out as they come in. So we are caring for 13-year-olds and 9 and 3.5 and 7 and a 13 and a 14-year-old. And I'm right there with you because I've got a 14-year-old. We have someone on the call who is caring for 2, 7, and 10 and 19, 6, and 4. Think about how flexible as a human being parent you have to be in a house or in a home that you share, when a 19-year-old needs you and a 4-year-old needs you. That's really challenging. 5 and 7. So when we look at our children, we expect them to self-regulate, to get everything done, on our timeline. It may not be developmentally, not even appropriate. it may not be developmentally possible. So I don't want that to be bad news. I'm sharing that with us so that we're really, really clear about where these things are learned. So this left side of the brain, is a powerful part of the brain that is analytic thought, and it's logical, and it processes language, and it's in charge of understanding reading. Like, we process words visually with our left side of the brain, and we process math visually with our left side of the brain. Our left side of the brain is looking for cause and effect. Syllogistic is the fancy word for that. Our left side of the brain is using words to define the world. So it's doing linguistic work. And our left side of the brain is what navigates and learns right versus wrong in an environment, right? This moralistic place. It grows in capacity across the span of childhood. And it is the last one that comes online. So we had those three parts of the brain, and sometimes something happens, something small or something big. And before my cortex knows it, it stops working when I flip my lid. And remember those two other parts, the red part and the blue? They stop working when my lid is flipped. And this is what they do. And we're going to talk about the brainstem first. And the essential questions of the brainstem look so cute. The essential question of the brainstem is, am I safe? And the part of the brain that really navigates safety is the amygdala. It's always looking, right? And the brainstem, if the amygdala doesn't feel like it's safe, the brainstem is what puts these things that we see. Its communication is physical sensation. And the tools are fight, flight, and freeze. And I need to reorder those. When I send you this slide deck, I'm going to reorder them, because the first one is flight. I'm looking around. Can I run away from this? If I can't run away, can I fight it? And if I can't fight it, maybe I freeze and I stop all motion and I stop all movement. So those are the four F's. There are two others that I want to add. There's faint, which is actually temporary systemic collapse, like literally going to the floor. And then there's also fawn. And fawn is a tender one. Fawn is if we've been around something or someone who is in charge of our care and not making us safe and making us unsafe. Fawn may be a reaction that is a reaction that gets us closer and we think keeps us safer from danger. It's almost, if you have been studying psychology at all, it's like the Stockholm effect, where you're trying to get close to your captor, trying to appease them. It's appeasement. And I'd say that very, very tenderly in our time tonight. So when things come up from our body, from our senses into our nervous system, goes to the brainstem. If am I safe is yes. And we have another part of the brain that does some figuring. And that, the essential questions, is the limbic system. Essentially, do I belong? Asking, am I cared about? Am I loved? Do I love and care about myself? Do the people around me understand me? Am I being listened to? Am I being seen? And am I being treated in such a way that celebrates and preserves my autonomy and my dignity? Those are some heavy questions. And it's very possible that our children, right, in a variety of settings, may be feeling that with some people, maybe not feeling it with some other people and in some other communities, or in the community at large. Our communication with that's our feelings. Our barometer about the answers to those questions are our feelings, which is another reason to dive into that emotional granularity. And also perhaps a reason why we may not dive into that. In our tools, blaming, shaming, name calling, gossiping, defending. And this one hits home usually if I'm having this conversation with educators, or if I'm having this conversation with parents or caregivers. If you've ever heard, "I hate you," from a child, it's coming from that limbic system. In that moment, right, that's what they're feeling. It may not be true, right? But in that moment, that's what they're feeling. So there's something that's really interesting about the brain as well. Our brain is a social organ. Feel free, this is just one slide where you can see this all in one space. But our brain is a social organ, and we're wired to connect. So have you ever yawned when someone yawned, or cried when someone cried? So since our brains are wired to connect, we are social creatures. Our brains reflect back what we see. So sometimes when your lid is flipped, it might flip the lid in me. And that is why it is so hard, like superhuman hard, superhero work, to stay grounded in someone's upset. Our brains are wired to learn socially. We are wired to feel, like literally in our bodies, what someone else feels. That is one of the ways that we build empathy. So this idea that our brains are wired to connect is another way of saying mirror neurons. Now, our mirror neurons do something else. They form the basis of social referencing. So social referencing is a fancy term, but it means it's how we learn. I say that the brain is a social organ. Our brains learn to appreciate and utilize others' emotional communication. This social referencing is really essential for how we adapt in the world. And it allows us to navigate complex and sometimes really unclear or ambiguous situations based on the cues of others. So I want to pause. I want to just pause in my sharing for a moment and ask the question, based on what we just learned together, based on what we just shared together, what is one thing that we just learned and shared that is interesting, that is helpful? What's one thing from what we've just learned and shared together that's interesting and helpful? I want to take, just like we did before, with that question, what was something from the offering that was interesting and helpful? Write about that for a moment. And then we're going to go back into the breakout rooms so you can share. So what was something that was learning? What was some learning that was helpful from that section? And the reason we're going into breakout rooms is that the people that do the most learning are the people that do the talking. So if you're recording this, or if you're watching this on the recording, take a moment. And I invite you to go share this with someone, like share what you just learned with someone else. Miss Garcia, are the breakout rooms that you had still there?
Yes.
Okay, so you're going to be going into breakout rooms, most likely with the people that you've already met. And they are open up, and I'm going to call you back in 3 minutes. So it's not a long time. And they are open for you to join. And Sarah, if you want to share, you can always put that into the chat. And Jinkei, I love your Chihuahua on the screen. And if you want to share and you can't go into a breakout room, you can put that into the chat as well. I see that, Jinkei. I appreciate you being willing to be with us while you're commuting on the train. Thank you. I'm calling everyone back. They're going to have 60 seconds to return. Welcome back. Everyone's going to have 60 seconds or 51 seconds to return. And if you're back into the room and you're willing, we will have an opportunity to share out to the group big takeaways from our learning when we all come back. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Rooms 2 and 3 are using every little bit of time. I can imagine that probably wasn't enough time. Welcome back, everyone.
Oh no, Cecilia was telling me something I don't know. I need her to finish her sentence.
I know that's not enough time. So we go out into breakout rooms, we do a little writing, we go into breakout rooms and share, and then we come back. And some of the best learning actually happens in the breakout rooms. So to the answer of the question, from what was shared so far, what seems useful? What are you learning? Are there 2 or 3 people who are willing to share? Because we have time for sharing.
I think I need Cecilia to finish her thought.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
I was just sharing with them that because I'm a parent mentor in a kindergarten classroom, I hear a lot of, upset students, frustrated. And of course, granted, in kindergarten, you're learning to get along with your peers. You're learning to express your feelings. And it's just amazing how I see the teacher continuously allow these students to redeem themselves, even when you can see that she's also being worn down by that whole the lid thing, And so for me, I will be very honest, it reminds me when I come home that I need to give that same energy to my children, that not just because they're my children do I get away with being upset and saying, no, now go to your room for the rest of the, afternoon, because now you've made me upset. So the same way that we expect educators and people that are around our children to give that, we need to also maintain that same energy.
That's a superhero educator right there, because it is very, very difficult to maintain your calm in someone else's storm. And Cecilia, I'm number one, let me thank you for being a parent mentor. And number two, I want to really appreciate that teacher in that classroom for her ability to do that. And it's a learned skill. Would anyone else like to share? We have time for more.
I guess nobody's talking.
But, I'm comfortable with that.
So something that I saw when I was in the school one day. So some of these kids get upset and get angry, and the teachers stay there and they just look at them and they're just calm and they take the beating, but then they figure out, to say something else. But some of them kind of don't like it and they unleash at them some other way. But you could tell, there's different ways, different teachers, different things that they do. I get the test, how they task everything for these kids, and I get how they're upset. The majority of them complain about the 5th graders and the 6th graders, that something happens. And I think it's the hormones. They just come out. It's just crazy. It's just different. I never understood it until, I went into one of the recess and I helped out the teacher for recess. And this one kid was like, they're like, get in line. Okay. I'm like telling them, get in line, get in line. And one of them is like, I'm not going to do what you tell me to do. And I was like, oh, what? I'm just here to help. I don't get paid. I don't get nothing. And then I said, you need to get in line. No, I'm not going to tell you. Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. I was like, wow. So I called the recess teacher. She came and then she took the person in. But the next time I saw this person, she's sitting on the staircase with another friend, and I said, what do you want to do? What do you want to do when you grow up? And she just looked at me like surprised, like, why am I talking to her? And her friend next to her said, oh, she's going to be a lawyer. She's going to be a lawyer and take care of the Black people for, help us out. And I'm like, that's good. That's good to hear. And that was it. The third time I saw this little girl, she ends up coming back to the school after she graduated and coming to help the recess. And I'm like, oh, you're here. And she's like, oh, so you graduated, you miss it? Yeah, I miss it. And I'm like, oh, so I don't get paid for being here, right? No. I go, I don't get paid. The recess lady doesn't get paid. She's a security person. She's not paid for this. And they just bring us out and have fun with you guys so that you can have fun and get out. But we don't get paid for this. I don't get paid. I'm just here helping because my kids are here. Oh, I go, now you remember how you treated me. So remember that when you go forward that, you don't treat somebody like that because they have nothing to do with whatever you're upset with. But, eventually you're going to figure that out on your own. And I think you just did because you missed coming back here. I think there's probably high school is not as great as you thought it was going to be. And now you miss what was the nice times and appreciate it. And she's like, yeah, I do. So then my husband comes into for report card and I see her and I go, honey, that girl right there is going to be a lawyer. She's going to be our lawyer. Okay. So remember to hire her for a lawyer next time, because I think she's going to be a lawyer in the future. So remember her. And that was it. And she smiled and it was kind of funny though, but it was, sometimes you have to talk to these people and calm them down from whatever anger they might have from home or something. But there's some kind of anger out there, and we tend to vent that out on people, and eventually when we feel kind of somebody securing us, like you said about the brain, the security, the threat, well, no, they're gonna hurt me or something. When you lower that and you get to I feel safe with this person, then their true person comes out, and they're like, they give you the hug. which most kids do after they feel that security, like, oh, you're not here to hurt me or get mad at me, you're here to help me. And that's what happens a lot. That's what I noticed.
I want to build on what you just shared, because that arc of the story talked about, number one, relationship and the strength of relationship, but also the strength of the relationship in that very first, the relationship over time. So we have this thing called private logic. And when we think about this, so this is something that I want to think about, like, what might make us, as we're looking and perceiving at the world, right? So we perceive the world with our senses, our eyes and our ears. We make interpretations about what we perceive in our cortex, in our brains. We then make and create beliefs, and I represent this with the heart, right? The spirit. We create beliefs about our interpretations, and our beliefs drive the behavior. And our beliefs about who I'm safe with, who I'm not safe with, who I am in the world, are all of those beliefs drive behavior. And this is a different way of looking at behavior. It's not a way of looking at behavior, which is, here's the behavior, here's what came right before the behavior. We sometimes think about that in psychology as the antecedent. So you get rid of the antecedent and you extinguish the behavior. This is another way of looking at behavior, as behavior is communication. Behavior is telling us what our beliefs are. And there's another piece of this private logic. This private logic comes from Rudolf Dreikers and his interpretation of the works of Alfred Adler, Adler University right downtown in Chicago. But there's also a neuroscience connection. And this neuroscience connection is, this was from our vagus nerve. And I want to press into this a little bit, because the science behind this is really helpful for us to know. So this is a picture of the vagus nerve, I believe from Gray's Anatomy. Gray, who is the medical illustrator. And so it's the vagus nerve, and it's the brain, and the brain is turning over the shoulder and looking. And what do you notice about this? What do you notice about the vagus nerve here? You can put it into the chat. You can unmute. What do you notice about this? Looks like a plant. Someone private messaged me that it seems like it gets into the gut. Yep. It's long. So this vagus nerve, and I want to define it as, it's spelled VAGUS. It's cranial nerve 10. And if you're ever learning about it, or you are trying to look it up, it's also called cranial nerve, written as cranial nerve 10 with an X for the Roman numeral 10. It's known as the wanderer. There are 12 cranial nerves. This one is the 10th. Some are only sensory, only bringing stuff into the brain. Some are only motor, meaning only giving directions out to organs. And this is 80% sensory and 20% motor, which means that it is always on getting information and bringing it up to the brain. And look where it lives, right? It innervates, which is a fancy word for it controls and gets information from the muscles of facial expression, the muscles that control the voice here in our voice box, and the muscles that control the little bones in our ears that are responsible for actually hearing sound. it innervates every organ in our torso, including our lungs and our heart. GI stands for our gastrointestinal tract. It is literally our gut. And it is always on. And it is hypersensitive to perceived hypocrisy and to authenticity or inauthenticity. So it's our gut response. And this is the perception of the other person. And so this is the challenge in our relationships. And this is from Robert Sapolsky, who is a neuroscientist that studies primate behavior and behavior in humans, is that this feeling in our gut, we have an embodied sense. We have embodied neural memories. And we don't just passively forget that something is scary. We have to actively learn that it isn't anymore. And why that's important when we think about the things that are in the vagus nerve is that we have perceptions of safety. So if behavior is communication, which we talked about, if behavior is the skill level that someone has, the encouragement level, the resources that they have, behavior that we see is a child solution to a problem that we might not see, but behavior is also the barometer of perceived safety and the perception of the individual. So this circle I drew to think about what's actually like actual safety. It's safe here. I've done everything that's possible to make sure that it's safe here. And it's the perception of safety in the other human that might be the reason we're seeing the behaviors that we do. I think this would be important in times other than COVID. And it's really important for me to understand that COVID has affected this. So here's how. It's subconscious. We cannot just turn off our vagus nerve. So we're always scanning for threats. We recognize and interpret other people's facial expressions and decide whether or not they're safe. So you could be rolling your eyes at something else that happened. You could have a grimaced face because your own belly is in pain. And someone can see that and think that you're rolling your eyes at them, or think that the grimace is from something that they did. We perceive and process other people's vocal tone. So my vocal tone, especially when I'm in the middle of a presentation and we're at 6:03, so I have plenty of time left. I'm slow, I'm methodical, I'm lyrical. But towards the end of my presentation, I might get really worried. I might start talking really fast. And when I talk fast, you might talk fast, or you might get startled. If I were speaking really, really loudly, if I were to suddenly yell downstairs to my kids, that would create a startle response, because we are designed to get cues of process and vocal tone. We're also designed to evaluate the head tilt of someone else. I know this seems really silly, but it's the idea of we perceive someone who has a really erect spine and who may even be physically over us as threatening. Where if we have our head tilted ever so slightly, or someone else does, our neural systems feel that, perceive that as safety. And we also really notice the gestures and the postures of other people. And that actually, the fact that we're on Zoom right now and you can't see some of my gestures turns off some of that posture. It doesn't turn it off, but if my hands are making big gestures, if my arms are making big gestures, you may not see that, so it may not register. So how can we use this to help increase the perceived perception of others, especially for those children who are in our care, whether they're our kids or whether they're kids that we're taking care of on the playground or when we're volunteering in a classroom. So in relationships, how we can use this is when we feel like we're unsettled, we can pause And I want to, before I go into these tools, I want to preface this by saying, assuming that your immediate physical safety is at risk, is not at risk. So assuming that your immediate physical safety and the physical safety of the other people in your care, an opportunity for you to pause. You settle your body. If you can consciously soften your face and maybe soften your trunk. It's really hard to yell if the muscles in your abdomen are soft. So that's one way to use this information for a benefit in building relationship. Modulating your vocal tone. The fancy word is prosody. So prosody is this wide range of tone and the wide range of volume. So modulating your tone and also even bringing your tone, your volume, making it softer so that people really have to listen. It's my little head tilt and gesture. So thinking about how we can be soft in our facial gestures, and also keeping our limb gestures close to our trunk so that we don't inadvertently startle the nervous system of another. So those are 4 ways to use this. I also wanted to think about how we can apply some of this, the beginning of our work tonight, so that neuroscience piece, applying it into practice. So some other ways to apply these practices. So thinking about this hand model of the brain, if you found that interesting, if you found that helpful, teach that. Teach that simple concept to adults and children in your life. Having the opportunity to create nonverbal signals for communicating connection and upset. Now, I'm going to pause this for a moment because this hand model of the brain was written and created over, oh my goodness, almost 20 years ago. I believe that the first time that Dan Siegel talked about it was in 2003, so almost 20 years ago. So he uses a closed hand and then an open hand. I need to update my illustrations because now for this dysregulated part of the brain, I'm going to take the opposite hand and pull the fingers back. The reason I'm going to do that is because in the pandemic, a Canadian organization that is for domestic safety created this hand signal to demonstrate to people where they weren't feeling safe. So it was an open and closed palm that says, I need help. And so it has been really effective. There was a woman who, I think a young girl, like a 14 or 15-year-old child, who was abducted in one state and she was in another state and she flashed this sign to a car and got help. So for our purposes, when you're teaching this to a child, think about this as a closed hand, as that integrated state, and then all the way back with the other hand as dysregulated. So that's why I want to be really careful with what we're teaching, with what I'm teaching. So sharing that, creating nonverbal signals for communicating upset, create, and also connection. I use a little in my family, in my work with other people, that connection. I hear you, I see you, I appreciate you. I make a little heart with my hands. You can do that in any other way that feels right for you and your family. Building that emotional vocabulary together, that hands, that wheel that we had with the emotions, right, is really, really helpful. If you are thinking about it and just reading with a very young child, we have some children who are, or some parents of children who are very young on the call. As you're reading to them, ask what the characters might be feeling. What characters do, or what emotions do the characters feel helps them be able to name emotions in themselves. And if we could also normalize the depth and breadth of human emotions, when I was a very young person, I got the message that being mad and being sad, sometimes being scared, wasn't okay. Like the only okay emotion was happy. If we can do what we can to normalize human emotions as things that give us information, that can be really helpful for our children as they're navigating. Maybe they won't feel bad about being sad. We can also teach our children to recognize the physical sensations of emotions. You know, oh, I see that your teeth are clenched. I see that your fists are balled. I see that you have some wrinkles in your forehead. Right? All right. It looks like you're mad. And you could even just guess, right? And if you're wrong, kids will tell you, I'm not mad, I'm sad. Or I'm not sad, I'm scared. They're often going to tell you how they feel. They're very, very clear communicators. Then another practical way to apply this learning is to co-create a calming spot, a place to feel more integrated. The idea that we do better when we feel better, and moving from this dysregulated state to a regulated state takes time. And you could model this for yourself as well, for all the community members that share your space, whether you lead a classroom or you lead a family in a home. The other piece that literally could be world changing is what if everyone on this call or everyone who's listening to this recording decided today that let's problem solve only when we're emotionally regulated. Because when we're problem solving, we want to use our creativity. We want to use our flexibility. So what if we problem solve when we're integrated? And what if we pause problem solving when dysregulation occurs? So those are some practical offerings to apply the learning. Before we open up for questions, I wanted to add in some science from some other thinkers. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey, and Oprah's name should be on here. I'm sorry, it's not on my slide. I think about Bruce Perry. He is the #1 expert in our country on trauma, and especially trauma in children. And he co-authored with Oprah Winfrey, most recently, a best-selling book called What Happened to You? Bruce Perry offers this, which is, and if you're just listening to this, it's a triangle that goes up from the bottom: regulate, relate, and reason. He offers this as an opportunity, as a stepwise fashion. Like, this is the order to work with someone who is dysregulated. So first we regulate. We regulate. Our regulation can be created by routines and practices and showing up with our calm and someone else's storm. So that first communicates to the brainstem, you're safe here. You're safe with me. Next, we talk to the limbic system and we relate. Whatever we can do to provide an attuned and empathetic response to connect. And notice, especially when we're wearing masks, especially when the ambient noise is loud, it can be really difficult to calm down, to quiet down. It can be challenging to relate in a way that's attuned, because we have the challenge of, when we wear masks, not having everything available to the other human being. I'm absolutely not saying anything about masking. That is not what I'm saying, especially today. But what I'm saying is we may have to relate in a way that takes a little more time than it will once we can take our masks off in the future. And after we do steps 1 and 2, where we talk to the brainstem with our responses, we talk to the limbic system, only then can we relate and try to problem solve. And that process may take some time. The other offering is from a woman, her name is Tina Payne Bryson. And there are 3 steps that she offered to attend to someone else if they're really dysregulated. And I'm sure that people in the presence of really skilled educators, especially skilled educators in early childhood, have learned to do this. So getting down at eye level or heart level, finding something empathetic to say in a calm, concerned, or connected tone, right? And that can be, it looks like you're having a really hard time. You look angry or whatever other emotion. You seem upset. And then communicating in some way, I'm right here with you. So this calm, empathetic tone speaks to the brainstem. Communicating in some way, I'm right here with you, builds that connection. So I'm here for you. Come find me when you're ready. We can figure this out together. You're communicating. You're not alone. So I want to pause. That was a lot. I want to offer an intentional regulation practice. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment before this last slide. So pausing with an intentional regulation practice, feel if you're seated, if you're standing, however this finds you, feel the part of your body that's being supported by the earth. Lengthen your spine and see if you can drop your shoulders. And then as you take a deep breath, see if you can bring that deep breath into your belly. And take a moment, turn your head, turn your trunk, and look over one of your shoulders into the back of the room, behind you. And come back to center and turn the opposite way. Look into space behind you and come back to center. That centering practice I learned with reading the work of Resna Menachem. And he wrote a book called My Grandmother's Hands. And he is the second person that taught me about the vagus nerve. He calls it the soul nerve. And these intentional practices that he offers in his book, My Grandmother's Hands, helps us to get settled in ourselves. He talks about settling as the thing that has to come before self-regulation. So settling is a way of finding that pause. And I wanted to get us settled before I offered this last slide. And the last slide is, it would be amazing if just with this hour and 19 minutes of your time that you have invested to this evening and in this conversation, that you would never lose it and you would never get dysregulated again in the presence of a child. And that is, I guarantee, not going to happen. It would be amazing if that were true, but we're going to get dysregulated again. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to offer our storm instead of offer our calm. And if we can offer and just acknowledge that as a mistake, and that acknowledge that mistakes are opportunities to connect, as mistakes are opportunities to reconnect. If we think about it, every time you flip your lid as an adult, we have an opportunity to model respectful repair. I really lost my temper. Honey, I'm sorry. I'm going to work on that. I yelled when I could have listened. I'm going to work on that. That allows not only our children to realize that we are not perfect, but that also allows us to model repair with our children so that they have a chance in modeling this with others. So my last question tonight is, what's one thing that you might be taking away from tonight that you think is going to be helpful the next time you're in the presence of someone, especially a child who might be dysregulated? What's one thing that you found helpful tonight? And if you could put that into the chat. We can read that out. And I'm seeing in the chats that Cecilia mentioned Nadine Burke's TED Talk on childhood trauma and life expectancy is amazing, heartbreaking and amazing. Absolutely. She also wrote a book called The Deepest Well, which I highly recommend. And this is another opportunity. If you put your email into the chat, I can offer you 6 things that she recommends to help increase our protective factors to toxic stress.
I wanted to say something about, you know, the one of the things that you were saying is true, that you have to see the mistake, kind of say you're sorry or something and notice it, but you know, your posture and tilting the head. I think I like that because you have to stop and listen. One of the things I notice is sometimes when I have a conversation with somebody, they're like, oh, you know, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And, you know, you're talking and all of a sudden you touch a topic that touches a nerve and their voice starts getting higher and they're starting to attack you. And you're like, what is wrong with, you know, like, why are you yelling at me and, you know, talking? So then I'm like, you know what? Well, my husband said, what you need to do is just listen. People need to vent out. Just sit there and listen. Don't answer back. They don't want to hear your opinion. They don't want to hear what you want to say. Just sit there and listen, because I think they're venting out for other problems that they're having, and they're attacking you at the time. So I think that's one thing that some people should learn is when somebody comes and they're starting yelling and starting screaming, it's like, what the hell is happening? Say that in your head, but then just start listening to them. And I think they calm down and then they figure out you're not talking because you're like, what's wrong with you? Giving them that tilt. What is wrong with you? And then, you know, you figure out that they finally figure it out that the anger is not towards you, it's somebody else. So most of the times we do that to everybody, and we even do that to our kids. And our kids are like, oh, why me? Why are you yelling at me? But, you know, that's something that I learned. And you hit some of those steps about the tilting the head and just listen. Sometimes works.
That tilt of the head, if you can remember it, it is absolutely, when someone comes at you and yells, it is completely natural for us to back up, to stiffen our thing, to back up a couple paces and to reorient ourselves. As long as our safety, and that's a key one, right? As long as our safety is not at risk, that tilt of the head can actually be really disarming. I see that in the chat, there was focus on regulation before solving the issue. It'd be very, very, as we close out tonight, it would be very encouraging for me if I know what helped you this evening. And let me just do a final share. I'll put my information into the chat. Let's see, I believe that you're here. So I just wanted to say thank you for joining. For those of you who are listening to this as a recording, kristen.hovius@selchicago.com is my email address. I love bringing this to the world. My goal is to share this with as many adults as possible. So if I can help you bring this to your community, it would be my great honor. And there is there's an opportunity to purchase our brain book, which is that children's story. But more importantly, there's an opportunity to, I'm going to stop the share. There's an opportunity to have access to the online learning tools. So I have an online read aloud for our brain book, and I'm going to drop that into the chat while we end up tonight. Janet, can I hand it back to you?
Yes, you can, Kristen. Thank you very much for the wonderful workshop that you've given us. You gave us so much great information, and what I could read from the chat, everybody really seemed to enjoy it. Everybody, I want to thank you so much for coming to our workshop today. If you do have any questions or any comments, you could leave them quickly in the chat. So Kristen will be able to grab your information. She could send you whatever information that you have requested. But in our end, that is it for our workshop. Thank you very much for being here. We hope to see you again soon.
I want to say good night, so you can stop recording. And then if anyone